Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 28th of March 2024. Look at the number of tabs at the top of my screen, and this is just the bloody military aid and equipment section. This should be half of the video, and then I go on to talk about geopolitics. But there's so much going on every single day, and I feel obliged to tell you all about it. I don't want to miss anything out to give you the complete picture. I know it's information overload, but it is there. I'm just trying to be the one-stop shop, I guess. But yeah, so sorry that this will be a whole video devoted to military aid, but I think it's also fascinating what countries are doing. Stuff like where we're going to start is so massively important politically that, I mean, this could almost, I think, warrants its own video alone. So France is stepping up, as I keep saying, like Macron, but also those around him in government, in French government, are really stepping up. France is coming up with the goods rhetorically, but also backing it up with real tangible changes that appear to show that they're getting onto this war footing or quasi-war footing. Yesterday we heard that they are going to, as a government, requisition military industrial institutions or facilities if they aren't producing things quick enough effectively for Ukraine. If they aren't pulling their weight, the state will step in, take over, and do it. And that is you're on your trajectory to a proper war footing. Well, now we're hearing, from now on, this is French aid to Ukraine, saying all equipment leaving the French armed forces, mainly land equipment such as VAB, due to renewal, such as a Scorpion program, will go to Ukraine. So in other words, they will no longer sell any obsolete or old or due to be refurbished or due to be replaced equipment to anyone else other than, well, just giving it to Ukraine, it seems here. In this context, and because Ukraine has become a priority, exports have been stopped. This is incredible. France is the second biggest arms exporter in the world. Now, I don't think its arms exports as a whole have been stopped, but I think it's the exports of older equipment that might find its way to many other nations around the world. So many nations do use French equipment. Now, the priority is going to Ukraine. I wonder what this will mean with regard to French airframes. Now, that is significant. Anyway, he continues, Ukraine's priority also, or the priority of Ukraine, is also extends to artillery. 80% of the 155mm shells produced in 2024 will go to Ukraine, as we already know. And all of Nexter and KNDS's 2024 production of Caesar cannons, 78 of them, are destined for Ukraine, which we already knew. Denmark led the way by donating all of its artillery, which, it's not just France, obviously. Denmark really leading the way with regard to how much they've spent in terms of GDP, percentage of GDP, on aiding Ukraine. And they said, look, we're not going to go to war with our artillery against anyone other than Russia, right? Russia is the only feasible opponent in any conflict that Denmark's going to be involved in. So what's the point of having our artillery that's been built to defend against predominantly Russia? What's the point of us having it in Denmark when Ukraine are doing that fighting now? And if Ukraine don't win, then kind of we're next type thing. So all of that equipment needs to go to Ukraine. There's no point having it in Denmark sitting around, or I guess, yeah, you can argue they need to be trained on it, but let's get it to Ukraine. And they've done that. All of their artillery and ammunition has gone to Ukraine. That's an incredible benchmark, a blueprint really for other nations. And France, I'd love to know what the intelligence was that got to Macron that made him change his position so radically or be so firmly behind Ukraine. It just suddenly sort of happened. And then he has become the rallying politician that is hopefully going to get people to coalesce around him. Now, there's this issue between France and Germany that I think's worth having a look into, and we'll go on to Germany in a second. But going back to what France have said, predominantly here, in terms of mechanized equipment, this is going to look like the VAB armored personnel vehicles and the AMX-10s, those wheeled light tanks, reconnaissance tanks, whatever you want to call them, that they will be going. French aid to Ukraine said hundreds of VAB will go, but not many AMX-10s. They probably don't have as many left. I don't know. Um, AMX-10 is replaced by the Jaguar. Pace is slow, unfortunately, but that's what he says. So we'll see what other information comes out from this. I'm particularly interested in the airframes. Right, let's now go to Germany. Oh no, before then, actually, a little more in France. So this is another example, I guess, of how France is ramping up support. So the what is this? Région Île-de-France, which is, I think, is that a Parisian region? Anyway, reaffirmed its solidarity with Ukraine and stepped up its support for Ukrainian people, notably with a new aid plan worth 560 million euros for Kiev and Chernihiv. So that is incredible. I won't try and do the translation myself, but thanks to the Ile-de-France, who continue to, and Valérie Pécresse, who continue to reaffirm their solidarity with Ukraine through concrete measures. This is tangible aid. The Ile-de-France Regional Council votes on a new aid plan of 560,000. So did I say 560 million? I said meant 560,000 euros for Kiev and Chernihiv regions through support for associations and NGOs. So that will filter through for, I guess, humanitarian support in those Ukrainian regions. 560,000, not million. That would be insane for a region. Anyway, Olaf Scholz again reassures Putin that everything will be okay, says Jean Kiev. Of course, he's going to say something like that. So Scholz has explained that he's not transferring the Taurus cruise missile to Ukraine because he is afraid of a Russia-NATO war, as if that's not kind of already happening. So it's this fear of escalation. I mean, he's flip-flopped. Well, not flip-flopped. He's just flitted around all these different reasons as to why Germany are not supplying Taurus. One reason is like the pea in a cup game, the shell game. You know, it's like, this is the reason. Okay, I think that's the reason. No, it's not. It's this reason now. No, it's this reason because you've told me that reason doesn't work. So now I'm going to go. Oh, it's, and it's just all like some big con trick. But I think the idea is that he's afraid of escalation. I think that's a general rationale behind it. And yet, at the same time, it's really easy to have your perception distorted by the whole Taurus thing alone. But of course, as Olaf Scholz has come out and then said, Germany is supporting Ukraine more strongly than any other country in Europe. So despite France being awesome and moving in the right direction, Germany still provides more stuff to Ukraine. With weapons and ammunition. We spend more than 28 billion euros on this alone, more than many other countries combined, and we will do so for as long as is necessary. In doing so, we will show Putin that he should not hope to simply sit things out until everyone else stops supporting them, which is a really important point, that everyone's in it for the long haul, so that Putin can't expect to win the long game. But still, that Taurus thing is an issue that skews people's perceptions. Quote, as head of government, says Olaf Scholz, I must accept my responsibility in matters of war and peace. And that also applies to the Taurus. We will do everything we can to prevent the war from escalating. So that's a key element, is that escalation. War between Russia and NATO. And I think this is the quote that is behind the idea that it's fear of escalation that then goes into that headline. We will do everything we can to prevent the war from escalating. War between Russia and NATO. Is that definitely connected to Taurus? I guess it probably likely is, but you could interpret that in several ways. Anyway, we will also not send soldiers to Ukraine. So that's a big thing. Again, that's your difference between Germany and France, although there is an argument that Germany would have to pass that through the Bundestag, and it would have to be some parliamentary bill, some change of the constitution. If I remember correctly, Germany is much more difficult, politically speaking, for Germany to send soldiers to Ukraine than it is for France to do that. So France can kind of unilaterally decide to do that from an administrative point of view, where Germany can't, I think. Anyway, EU High Representative Joseph Borrell is expected to present. Oh, by the way, as well on France, there are French parliament, or there's a French mission in Kiev today as we speak. I forget exactly who it is. It might be the speaker of the French Parliament, and some others are in Kiev at the moment. Again, showing you how important France sees it. Anyway, back to what I was saying. EU High Representative Joseph Borrell is expected to present a proposal for joint procurement initiatives, lethal and non-lethal, for Ukraine by April 2024, so imminently. He will also further intensify efforts to broker a deal on the next tranche of 500 million euros within the European Peace Facility, currently blocked by Hungary. So that's military aid going from Europe to Ukraine. The Czech government has approved allocating additional money, an unspecified sum, to buy artillery ammo for Ukraine. So the Czechs are upping their own contributions to their own initiative that everyone's come in on. There was also talk of Czechia finding large amounts of air defense ammunition, but nothing has been said about that. Because I talked about this the other day, the idea that everyone's got together to supply artillery ammunition because that was a pressing need for Ukraine. But actually, without the US supplying lots of massive aid packages, the Ukrainians are really struggling for air defense munitions. Right. Coalition of armoured vehicles has started work in Poland in support of Ukraine. The supply of weapons and ammunition for Western armoured vehicles, and maintenance and repair, training of crews and personnel, improving the tactics of using armoured vehicles. So this is one of the, I think, 9 coalitions that are presently in existence for help for Ukraine, where you gather countries that have particular expertise to then be part of the coalition to help Ukraine in that very narrowly defined area. Now, on Poland, we have, and this is with the Czech initiative, Poland will double its contribution. We don't know what the contribution is, mind, but they're going to double it. So it could be $1 and it's doubled to $2. No. Whatever the Polish were contributing to the Czech artillery initiative, they're now going to double it. This was announced by the Foreign Minister Sikorski. They have not disclosed the amount of money being committed, but he said that it is already a significant amount. So Poland really starting to step up again. They've been such stalwart defenders, but then they've had this moment of political instability with their elections, with the coalition, minority coalition taking over, and you got PIS and Donald Tusk's coalition still at loggerheads with each other. And then you've got the border issues with the Polish hauliers and the Polish farmers. So the Poland's had to really do a lot of time dealing with all this, and their military aid they've been concentrating on making sure they've got their own army up together, and they're procuring so much equipment. But I think, we're starting to see Poland get back in the game there. Now, Turkey here. Turkey's Ark of Defense will deliver 116,000 M107 155mm rounds to the Department of Defense this year on what is almost certainly is Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative contract. Additional contract awards are expected soon for delivery next year. Meanwhile, another Turkish firm, Repcon, will begin production of 155mm shell bodies this June at General Dynamics Ordnance and Tactical Systems new plant in Mesquite, Texas. This new GDOTS plant will eventually produce 30% of all US shell bodies. So is that a Turkish US conglomeration there? I'm not quite sure. Finally, the US is in discussion with Turkey to ramp up their purchases of Turkish-made TNT for use as explosive filler in US-made shells. And this is where there's potentially a bit of a bottleneck around the world. It's as you're trying to make so many artillery shells, you need the explosive fillers for them. It's the raw materials that are going to be, there's going to be a lot of pressure in the logistic chains for that or for those. The USA is negotiating with Turkey to increase purchases of explosives, as mentioned, but it could potentially, this is the extra bit of info, could potentially, according to Bloomberg, triple the volume of 155mm ammunition produced in the US. So in order for the US to ramp up to, what was it they wanted to be at? They went from 14,000 to now, I think they're over 30,000 shells a day. So that's more than a month. That's more than 1,000 shells a day. But I think their end goal is sort of 80 to 100,000 shells a month, and in order to do that, obviously they'll need to get explosives in much larger quantities. DW, the German public broadcaster, has said in the coming days Germany will transfer to Ukraine at the first stage 10,000 artillery shells from the arsenals of the Bundeswehr, according to Major General Christian Freuding. In Berlin, he said it was decided to supply ammunition to Ukraine in 3 stages. So that, I mean, 10,000 is what the Russians are firing per day. So that is at Russian levels at the moment 1 day's worth of shells. Ukrainian levels, I don't know what they are. Some saying 2,000 a day, so that's 5 days of shells. But still, good stuff. Need as much as they can get. Right, Anatoly Kuzmin, 64, owns one of Ukraine's private defense factories, making roughly 20,000 shells per month, as per AP. And that is really significant for an indigenous producer to be kicking that out now, when they started pretty much with nothing. The Russians seized his farm tools factory in Melitopol, so he started over in western Ukraine and aims to produce 100,000 shells per month and drone components. I mean, brilliant stuff from the Ukrainians themselves, and of course that will mean that they will have a more sustainable supply of munitions. We need French MO 120 mortars. Their shells are silent and very accurate with a range of 17 kilometers. This would give us an advantage over the Russians. In any case, artillery is and will remain relevant because it works in all weather and on all terrain. This is really significant. The 1-2 mil French mortars are very particular because they are rifled. They have a rifled barrel, which gives them apparently greater range and accuracy. I believe, rather than most mortars are smoothbore, and so they're fin stabilized. So when a shell comes out, it's not spinning. It just comes out and it's stabilized in the air, so it doesn't wobble with the fins it has on the back. With rifled shells, so something like that is a shell. You can see some bands there. I believe that will be for a rifled, rather than, I don't know if they attach a fin system to it, but something like that would fire out of, say, that mortar or an artillery piece with rifling. Yeah, so that would be rifling on an artillery barrel that will then, the grooves on the barrel that sort of go in that circular way, that twist the it's the rifling twists the shell, the munition, spins it, and that spin is what gives it stability, but also accuracy and range. Those can fire, I believe, a little bit further than fin. They'd have a lot more drag with the fin on, right? It might stabilize them, but the air resistance will kick in there. So the French 120 mil mortars are very particular for being, I think, the only rifled mortars. And obviously, the Ukrainians here saying, "Yep, we'd like more of them. Thank you very much." Le Monde says the militarization of the Ukrainian National Police is accelerating to compensate for the lack of soldiers. In the Donbass, the Lyut Brigade, composed mainly of members of the National Police, is fighting on the front line to repel the Russian offensive. And again, when you're desperate for boots on the ground, giving soldiers a bit more training, a few more guns is one way of giving a policeman a bit more training, a few more guns is one way of doing it, I guess. Britain is developing technology for Ukrainian drones to counter Russian jamming, and this is engineers at Evolve Dynamics in southern England, near me, I wonder where they are developing technology to counter Russia's electronic warfare capabilities, aiming to keep Ukraine's reconnaissance drones operational despite potential jamming. This effort is part of an international initiative to support Ukraine's drone program, which is crucial for maintaining an edge against Russia. Good stuff from the UK. They are involved in the drone initiative, the drone coalition, very heavily involved in that, and are spending more and more money on supplying drones to Ukraine. Of course, as I've said many times before, there's a mutual benefit there. It's not just charitable. We get to do R&D and improve our understanding of the technology and produce better technology. We're forced to, because of the needs of Ukraine. So we're upping the ante there, then providing the stuff to Ukraine, getting feedback on that, and seeing how well that operates, and to improve. And this then leaves the UK in a better position to produce drones that don't get jammed, that are battle ready, and that if we were to go to war right now, then we would have producers who would be up to the latest tech and be able to support our own national security needs. So when you see companies or nations and their companies getting involved in supporting Ukraine, remember there's no such thing as a free lunch. This is not only strategically in our interest, Ukraine need to win because the power um, dynamics in the world. We need Ukraine to win. We don't want Russia to win, and all that kind of stuff, and a threat coming through Europe. Yeah, there is that, but also our own national security and our own armed forces. Giving stuff to Ukraine helps us get better stuff in the long run. Right, Rivne volunteers in Ukraine have set up a production line for decoys for the Ukrainian military, making wooden, metal, and plastic replicas of 120mm mortars, 82mm Vasilyok mortars, Starlink terminals, and Sentinel radars to mislead Russian forces. So these are all decoys being made by these volunteers in Rivne. It's fantastic, and cheap and cheerful. But at a couple of 100 meters up from a drone, these things look absolutely on point, and they end up using expensive munitions to blow them up, and don't end up blowing up Ukrainian actual equipment. Right, we're going to move from state actors to volunteer actors to Hollywood actors now. And it's incredible that in this whole panoply of browser tabs, one of them are just two Hollywood actors. Hollywood couple Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher. So he formerly married to Demi Moore. These two are staunch supporters of Ukraine. They're actively volunteering and helping Ukraine. They have raised more than $35 million to aid Ukraine, involving over 65,000 donors worldwide. Additionally, in 2022, they donated 20,000 bulletproof vests to the Ukrainian armed forces. Legends, absolutely brilliant. And this is, again, when I look at stuff like this, I always say to you, or often say to you, what is the equivalent in Russia? Like when this is happening, and it might be United 24, it might be Mark Hamill doing something, it might be volunteers over here, it might be from Bristol with Love in Bristol sending over stuff, or there's a Surrey one that I follow and have helped previously. It might be what Greg and Zhenya are doing with our collective. All of these different elements of support around the world for Ukraine, because people have obviously got moral compasses, right? What are Russia doing themselves? Like how does that look in terms of, is there a massive asymmetry there? And if there is a massive asymmetry there, then we could kind of construct an argument based around ordinary morality, which is that if intuitively people are much more likely to support Ukraine, then I think we can see that there's just a moral intuition that's at play here, that Ukraine are the good guys, Russia the bad guys. Anyway, I digress. German aid to Ukraine here says the Kirchlingen Volunteer Fire Brigade has donated, again, same kind of thing. Is there a volunteer fire brigade donating to Russia? If not, why not? Fire Brigade has donated a fully equipped firefighting engine to the State Emergency Service of Ukraine in the Kharkiv Oblast. It was handed over by Niels Tal. I presume this is someone that might be quite famous. Professional firefighter, no? Who supports as a volunteer with the Ukrainian Fire Brigades. Before that, it was transported to Ukraine in cooperation with the Water for Ukraine Initiative and Mission Siret. All of these initiatives, all of these support mechanisms, again, for Ukraine, what's it look like in Russia? Even though the vehicle looks old, registered in 1992, it's hardly been used over the years and has only driven around 18,000 kilometres and is in excellent condition. It will therefore provide many more years of good service to Ukraine. So excellent stuff. Get it over to, what's Prince Harry doing there? Get it over, oh no, it's someone else. Get it over to Ukraine. Good stuff. Love it. Council of European Development Bank lends almost $110 million to Ukraine for housing. That is a loan to restore housing for Ukrainians, infrastructure and whatnot. This means, quote, this means that more than 2,000 families will soon receive new homes, Kuprikov said on Twitter. These are people whose homes were totally destroyed. as a result of Russian aggression. It's just the slow destruction of a country and people coming together to do everything they can to get it fully functional and to help those who have been most affected. Sweden has allocated, in a similar vein, $11 million in humanitarian aid to both Ukraine, Gaza, and Sudan through the UN Food Programme. According to head of the UN Food Programme, Cindy McCain, these funds will help reduce hunger and save lives. And then there's this. So moving slightly away from what has been given, but kind of to what could be given, Ukraine received about 31 Abrams tanks, says Jürgen Naudit, while about 3,700 Abrams machines of the earliest modifications are aging in long-term storage sites and are unlikely to ever be used. Why? I know that they would take a lot of effort to get these refurbished up to a usable standard, but then what's the point of having them? Like, why have these unless you do something with them, unless you're potentially going to do something with them? Is the US, like, realistically going to resurrect the older Abrams? No. Would they be useful for Ukraine? Yes. Can you conceivably get them to Ukraine? Yes. Let's do it. Do it. Do it. Colby Badwa has reported previously that Greece, as I told you yesterday, is to sell its F-16C and D Block 30s. Greece bought 34 F-16C Block 30s and 6 F-16D Block 30s. 6 of the Cs and 2 of the Ds have since been written off after accidents, but the returning 32 Falcons must be bought for Ukraine. Best way to help Ukraine. I mentioned this yesterday. This would be a potential for getting hold of F-16s for Ukraine going forward, as they are trying to reduce their diversity of airframes so that they don't have too many different things to train on for logistics and whatnot, maintenance. F-35s that they're getting in, I think F-35s they're getting in from the US will replace a lot of these, sell them on to Ukraine. But, be warned, because Russia has said they will destroy F-16s in Ukraine the same way it destroys Western tanks and other equipment, Putin said. Is that the equipment that the Russians are having destroyed at a ratio that is really not cool for Russia against the Ukrainian losses? Just wondering. Hashtag just wondering. The president noted that if F-16s are used against the Russian armed forces from airfields of third countries, they will become a legitimate target for the Russian Federation. Now, this actually is an area of discussion I've had before, and I think this has to be one of the options for Ukraine, because there are only so many airfields that F-16s can be flown from. Because they need particular types of airfields. They're not like Gripens that can be kind of flown from a road. Although F-16s can probably be used in ways that are... there are predictions that they can't be used in certain airfields and on particularly long roads, because they suck up more foreign object debris, because their air intakes are different to, say, the Gripens, and so on and so forth. So how constraining that is, I don't know. But if that is the case, then Russia will know the airfields they're going to be used from and are waiting to just absolutely hammer the F-16s as soon as they're there. So my solution has been that you have F-16s parked at Polish or Romanian air bases or whatever. And it's not that they're flown from there necessarily, but it could be that you fly them from NATO countries to the airfield in Ukraine, get refueled, and then take off from there, do your mission, come back to an airfield in Ukraine, fuel up, and then fly it back. You're almost just using Poland or Romania or wherever as parking lots for planes. And that means that they won't get destroyed by Russian missiles. But Putin is now saying they will become a legitimate target. But that's on you, Putin. The West should say they're going to be allowed to be used in this way. And if you hit us, that will be war. That's our red line, Putin. Don't you fricking tell us what's going on here. You're not the one that dictates everything. We're going to dictate this to you. And if you even remotely attempt to target these planes when they're on NATO territory, you will incur the wrath of NATO. That's how I would play that. And unfortunately, I'm not president of the world. I'd be a benign dictator, right? Honestly, The power wouldn't go to my head, or would it? No, it wouldn't. Uh, Speaker Johnson likely to face hurdles upon introducing Ukraine aid bill. US House Speaker Mike Johnson is likely introducing a Ukraine aid bill after Easter, but is facing potential challenges due to internal party dynamics. We're going to dip into. I'm going to read the entire Kyiv Independent article. Why? Because the great thing about Kyiv Independent articles is that they're short, unlike 100% of my videos. Speaker Johnson likely to face hurdles upon introducing Ukraine aid bill. US House Speaker Mike Johnson is likely introducing Ukraine aid bill after Easter, but it does face potential challenges. US aid to Ukraine has been delayed since autumn 2023, as various versions of foreign aid bill have been derailed due to border security disagreements. In February, a $95 billion aid package to Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan passed the Senate with bipartisan support, 70 to 29, but House Speaker Mike Johnson has continuously opted not to bring it to a vote in the Republican-led House of Representatives. And that's not to do with anything other than the pressure from Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene. It is nothing to do with the value of that bill or anything to do with the border. It's nothing to do with that. This is Mike Johnson stopping it happen. Quote, House Republicans were crystal clear from the very beginning of discussions that any so-called national security supplemental legislation must recognise the national security begins at our own border, Johnson posted previously on Twitter. However, according to Representative Michael McCall, who's a Republican, chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Johnson has altered his initial stance and will likely schedule a vote on Ukrainian funding aid after Congress returns from Easter recess. McCall also noted that Johnson is in a difficult situation as he faces pushback from multiple representatives. Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has submitted a motion to remove Johnson from the position and has warned him against bringing Ukraine funding proposals to the House floor. She said, if you ever bring Ukraine funding, that's you out, basically. So you know where she stands on Ukraine aid, and quite why she thinks that, I don't know, but it's I think despicable. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, goodness me, she's in a very safe seat, I think. But come November 2024, goodness me, get her voted out. I don't care who it is that gets voted in place of her, they will almost certainly be better. Johnson has indicated potentially splitting funding for Ukraine and Israel into separate votes to address the two matters separately. As a growing number of Democrats have voiced their opposition to supporting funding for Israel operations in Gaza. That could be sensible, but it will delay it because I think that would mean it would have to go back to the Senate. President Joe Biden has urged Congress to pass an aid package multiple times, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has called for support in the House from both parties. Biden, speaking with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on February the 9th, said it would be close to criminal neglect if the US Congress fails to stand by Ukraine, and I totally agree. Anyway, that's enough from me. Too much, I know. I'll get on with drinking tea before doing my geopolitical update. And please remember, I'm doing a live with Greg Terry later, so maybe that geopolitical one will have to wait till the live. Anyway, Toodle Pip, speak soon.